Desperation turned into frustration, and yet it's another loss for the Florida Panthers. And now the question continues to be, will this actually convince them to sell at the deadline?
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, March 4th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the nation's #1 sports podcasting network, and it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at Monoman12. Joining me on today's edition of the show is Jacob Winans for another edition of Winans Wednesday. You can follow him on X at JakeW_8. Shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So, the Florida Panthers continued their road trip on Tuesday night, their second of 4, where they went into New Jersey and lose by a final score of 5-1, where the New Jersey Devils got 2 empty netters in the third period, and the Florida Panthers never led in this one, where it was an early goal from New Jersey. The Florida Panthers were able to respond just shortly after the power play, but unfortunately a swing in the momentum for the Florida Panthers with having a power play themselves. And after the New Jersey Devils scored 4-on-4, the New Jersey Devils ran away with the hockey game there. And as the takeaway I have for this, Jacob, is the fact that New Jersey was able to clean themselves up a little bit after the first period, because both teams were trading chances with their lack of puck management, where the breakouts were not clean out of the New Jersey zone. But at the same time, for the Panthers, a lot of those chances that were coming from New Jersey was them flying up the wing, whether it was left or right, and then somebody off puck was going to the net, and then a back checker was late to get to prevent a quality chance on Sergei Bobrovsky, even in the first period. And then we saw that as far as the transition goals with the first one off a mistake from Uvis Belinskis, and then the penalty that the Panthers took in the second period that ended up with where New Jersey led 2-1 and then ran away from it. So really it came down to the lack of puck management, and one team cleaned it up, the other did not.
Yeah, it was really from puck drop. The Panthers just didn't have it in any phase of the game tonight, but just a lot of mistakes that we would have called uncharacteristic earlier in the year. We would have called them uncharacteristic in the past couple of years, and this season, unfortunately, that's been characteristic of the way the Panthers have played. It's indicative of fatigue. It's indicative of frustration. They're doing a lot of things that over the past couple of years just aren't really in their identity, and right now they are in the worst way possible. It's the poor puck management. It's the lack of effort and hustle on the back check. It's the lack of a quality forecheck. The physicality is lacking. The net front presence is lacking. The goaltending is lacking. And really in that first period, we saw 2-on-1 after 2-on-1. And it wasn't situations where the Panthers weren't well positioned. It was situations where they were out hustled. And you just can't win that way.
Yeah, and then it happening at their offensive blue line. And it's funny because this was a game that was broadcasted both locally and nationally. TNT had the national broadcast tonight, and I was watching the local broadcast. But Bleacher Report Open Ice did post the interview with Paul Maurice during the first period, and just a not happy Paul Maurice and then they showed the replay of a Gustav Forsling turnover that resulted in Nick Bjugstad setting up Paul Cotter off puck there. And that was just happening so many times. There was consecutive opportunities where the Timo Meier line was doing it, where Timo Meier set one up, and then Timo Meyer was set up on this one. There was one where Simone Nemec nailed a stretch pass for the Aaron Ekblad and Gustav Forsling pair that allowed them to go up the middle of the ice, where they were just so spread out there as well. So that line was creating their chances. And the amount of times where I wrote in my notes Bobby with all caps, usually I write that in my notes as far as like a highlight save, that this was one that you just couldn't pin on the goaltender. And to think that in this game, in the first period especially, where Brendan Dillon was losing his composure towards the end of the first period, where the cross check on Anton Lundell to the head and then adding another one, and then going to the box as well, where Eetu Luostarinen might have gotten away with a penalty on Jack Hughes, but then Brendan Dillon getting on top of Eetu, and then the Panthers having a power play. But the fact that, yeah, they scored a few seconds after, but the fact that they couldn't do more after that is the most frustrating thing, especially going into the second period where they had 3 minutes and 8 seconds of total power play time. It's crazy when you see one errant pass and it negates the penalty, they score, and then you just can't gain that back.
Yeah, it's been the story of the whole season. It's the year of one mistake and it's in the back of your net. And just the timeliness of some of these. It's not even that they're consistently playing poorly. They're not consistently making mistakes. Yes, some nights they've completely missed on the goaltending and they've played solid games and just given up too many easy goals. And then there's nights like this where you make a handful of mistakes and they all end up in the back of the net, and you can't blame the goalie for that. Tonight Bob did a really good job keeping them in it in the first period when they just could not seem to figure out their style of play. There was a stretch in that first period where I saw like it felt like every other shift it was a 2-on-1 chance, and Bob was having to make cross crease saves. So tonight was one of those nights where it was a handful of mistakes in each period, and it could have been a lot worse. But over the course of the season, it's pretty demoralizing when you end up in a situation where you got to play kind of perfect, even have a chance. Too often the offense has just kind of gone dry and understandably so. There's been a lot of guys in and out of the lineup. Barkov hasn't played a game all season. We understand the situation they're in. And there's definitely a lot of guys playing hurt right now. But yeah, when you can't generate offense to stay in games, you definitely can't make mistakes that lose you games. And the timing of some of them, you just think about the Islanders game. That's a game where you really, really have no excuse not to at least get a point in that one. Just a really poorly timed mistake between your top D pair, and it ends up in the back of the net. You get nothing. Go into New Jersey, morale's got to be low after that, and it's just spirals out of control from there. So it's the timeliness of the mistakes. It's been a killer all season.
Yeah, and for this one, the Panthers were basically a one-line team, because I thought Bennett and Matthew Tkachuk were actually pretty great in this one with the amount of scoring chances that they made, the amount of times they were gaining the zone. There was one opportunity where Jacob Markstrom made a double save off of Sam Bennett in the first period, the amount of times that they were getting the give and go opportunities, although Sam Bennett did create that, have the turnover that led to the penalty to begin with. But also there was a lot of mismanagement of the puck from Brad Marchand right before that as well. But I thought that they were generating offense well. The amount of times that Nico Mikkola was getting through the chip and chases and getting his own opportunities and also activating into play, but was unfortunately the one left on the island with Uvis Belinskis' mistakes. He broke up a 2-on-1 that Jack Hughes tried to get to Jesper Bratt, and then for the New Jersey Devils there, he was also not necessarily the issue. So it just goes to show. And Paul Maurice made some line changes, put Dmitry Kulikov back on the second pair, made a lot of switches, putting Sandis Vilmanis up in the lineup, putting Mackie Samoskevich on that fourth line with Tomas Nosek, who made his season debut tonight. And the thing is, the most frustrating part is when they're down 2 in the third period, which that third period flew. Not a lot of whistles. And it took a while for the first one in that period as well. It was at one point I had to look at the tracker. It was 9-2 in favor of the Devils as far as shots. So as far as the Panthers' legs going for them, and also the fact that I feel like they accepted the fact that this season isn't it for them, even though they say all the right things in the media for not giving up and everything. Not that it just goes to that period showed me that maybe the Panthers accepted what this season is.
Yeah, that felt like a throwing in the towel kind of period. And it's not for lack of trying. They gave everything they could give to this point in the season to try to stay relevant in this race, and it's kind of just a perfect storm of everything that could go wrong for them this year has.
Mm-hmm.
And at a certain point, you have to be realistic about things, and no matter what they say in the media, no matter how badly they want to keep making a push here, at some point, realism sets in, and it's not going to happen this season. It's just not. The players they're human too. They get to a level of understanding that this season it's just not going to happen this season. So with that said, whatever course of action front office decides to take, whatever course of action individual players decide to take as it relates to their health, to their recovery, to their rehab, to guys who have injuries and need longer off seasons or surgeries, things like that I'm sure will come up. I think everyone has earned the right to make those decisions with their best interest in mind and the best interest of the team going forward into next season. So players should prioritize their health the rest of this year. Front office should prioritize development the rest of this year. And it feels like after that third period tonight, the tone kind of shifts now. It's about looking to the offseason, looking to next season, deciding how you want to play things when it comes to the deadline. And it's unfortunate we're in that position, but that's where we're at. And all hope is not lost. It's still a team with a wide open window and the core locked up. So it's just a little bit of a step back before hopefully a big step forward. And we'll see there's some big decisions to be made, of course, but it's just, I feel like they ran out of gas physically and they've kind of run out of will mentally to try to push through it.
Yeah, and that third period just showed us when the Devils were consistently in the passing lanes for the Panthers and connecting well. And the fact that it was a lack of forecheck for the Panthers was like, okay. I mean, it was a long shot anyway for this team, but it's just like, man, it's just when they pile up, it's just harder to really try to say publicly, hey, this team's not throwing in the towel. This team's not throwing in the towel. That it gets... It's tiring after a while. Not gonna lie here, but we're gonna transition over to segment number 2, where we are gonna discuss the 3 duds of the game and also discuss when we knew this game was lost. We'll discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And college basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into an even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want, rivalry games, ranked matchups, and whatever fits my read. And you can mix spreads, totals, and player props to match how you see the slate playing out. And you could head to FanDuel.com to get started, and that's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Segment number 2 here on this Wednesday, March 4th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And if you haven't already, make sure you check out our Everydayer Club. And it's an ad-free audio to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, and it's an access to our group chat on Discord and more. Use code DEADLINE ahead of the trade deadline for 1 month free. Join us now or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. Back here with Jacob Winans on another edition of Winans Wednesday, and it's another Florida Panthers loss, which means we are going to be discussing our 3 duds of the game and then the moment when we knew the game was lost. And so number 3 dud for me is going to be Uvis Balinskis. We saw the demotion that happened in the second period where he was on the pair with Tobias Bjornfoot, but made that big mistake early on in the game where it allowed the Devils to score in transition. Number 2 dud is going to be the Gustav Forsling Aaron Ekblad pair. It's very spread out, and we see how much the Panthers missed Seth Jones with Aaron Ekblad just a little bit too slow to catch up to Nico Hischier right before he was the one to take the hooking call there. And Uvis can't take care of the puck. Aaron Ekblad is too slow on the power play. So the Seth Jones's value just goes to show more and more. And the number 1 dud, I'm going to go with Brad Marchand, because it was Brandon Dillon who was losing his composure in the first period, and then it was Brad Marchand who was doing so in the second period. At one point, I mean, the penalty stopped after Brad Marchand's unsportsmanlike conduct, but turning the puck over and then spinning Paul Cotter around badly after the whistle right before the commercial break, gives a jab to Simone Nemec. And then I even mentioned, even before Bennett turned the puck over, Brad Marchand almost got the puck out of the Panthers' own zone while on the power play. So that disrupted things right before Aaron Ekblad even dished it to Sam Bennett out near the half wall. So it was just a lack of care of the puck. It showed amount of frustration that led to a little bit of selfishness. So that's why I have Brad Marchand as my number 1 dud. How about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go Brad Marchand as my number 3. Really for all the same reasons you said, but I don't know. I felt like, especially in that third period, he was really just disengaged. I wasn't even as upset about the dumb penalties and the turnovers, because at least there's a pulse there. At least with the turnovers, he's trying to make things happen. I understand that. Third period, I felt like he, more than anyone, really just didn't have it at all. The third period, it just seemed like he was checked out. Second dud, it's the Ekblad Forsling pair. I thought they were really, really bad tonight, and I expected a bigger game out of them, given that it was their miscommunication that cost the Panthers against the Islanders. Thought they'd come out and have a stronger game. The two of them have really, really looked just disjointed, a step behind for most of this season. And some of the concerns that people had about signing Ekblad long-term are really showing right now when Seth Jones is not in the lineup. The lack of foot speed, when you put him on the power play, it's a step down on the power play as far as speed goes, as far as decision-making goes. And for some reason, I feel like he's just kind of not really bothering to get shots on net anymore, which is odd, because it's one of his strongest abilities as a defenseman is getting pucks through traffic, and I feel like he just hasn't taken a lot of opportunities to do that. And then number 1 dud for me is I've got 2 guys that are going to share that spot for me. It's Sam Reinhart and Carter Verhaeghe.
Yep.
Need more from those guys, point blank. Sam Reinhart has been largely invisible most shifts. He had the big goal against the Islanders to tie the game late, but I don't know. I'm not seeing the Selke finalist in Sam Reinhart right now. We've suspected he's playing through something, and offensively, he and Carter Verhaeghe have just gone really cold at a time when you can't have that.
Yeah, and both of them with 1 shot each on the night as well. Even though the Panthers pulled the extra attacker with 3:55 left just after the commercial break, it took less than 20 seconds for New Jersey to score after that, and an errant turnover from Sam Reinhart that led to Dawson Mercer scoring there to make it 4-1 at the time. And then, hey, credit to the Panthers for still wanting to pull the extra attacker there. I mean, even if it's out of reach, but ended up as another empty netter for them. And through since late January, I know there was an Olympic break there. Carter Verhaeghe only has 1 goal. So yeah. And then back-to-back games that he had against Utah and Chicago, he goes 3 straight, goal, 2 straight games, and then right before that Toronto game on the 6th, he goes almost a full month there. So it's back to the discussion that we talked about even in last regular season for Carter Verhaeghe when he was going through his offensive struggles, and he had that baby bump there in December after that, but it really hasn't been really a lot of production since. And the fact that Carter Verhaeghe is also not playing a lot of power play time neither, that's also concerning when he's known as a sharpshooter as well. So that is also the concerning part about Carter Verhaeghe's game.
Yeah, the biggest concern is the contract right now. Here, you definitely need more production for what you're paying him and the term that's left on that deal. There's a lot of questions to answer in the offseason for some of these guys, but a lot of it just stems from like what are you going to do to improve? What are you going to do to add to your game and not be one dimensional? And there's a lot of guys right now that are just having one dimensional seasons, which we figured was going to be the case given the injuries, especially Barkov. Taking Barkov out of the lineup requires so much extra out of everybody else. And that just cannot be overstated. And a guy like Carter Verhaeghe suffers the most in a situation like that because
Yeah.
he can't afford to be one-dimensional anymore. He can't afford to be the offensive shoot-first winger who's focused on forechecking and burying opportunities that are kind of created for him by the elite center in Barkov and the all-star level playmaker on the other wing in Reinhart. Like the defensive prowess of the Barkov-Reinhart tandem on that line when Carter Verhaeghe's on the wing, he can just purely focus on offense almost. Not to say he's lazy and not a good enough defensive forward. He has that ability. It's just he's not a Selke quality defender. And and the guys that he's used to having on his line that take some of that responsibility, the biggest one is missing. And we talked about this early. There's going to be guys who have seasons this year that are just not indicative of what their career numbers and their averages as Panthers really look like. Carter Verhaeghe is the guy who is sort of the poster child for that. He is struggling, and we knew that was going to be the case. I don't personally think it's the same or even that similar to last year. I think last year was a lot of bad luck, really unfortunate kind of slump that he went through last season, but I didn't think that was for lack of effort or for anything. I didn't think anything about last year's season jumped out at me as like red flags about his game. This year, I think he would have bounced back had he had Barkov with him, had he had a real like regular lineup that he had been playing with. So it's unfortunate. It's 2 years in a row, one lost really to not lost, but one down year due to bad luck and one bad year due to a ridiculous rash of injuries affecting the entire lineup.
I just looked this up. What do you think Carter Verhaeghe's best line has been as far as goal differential?
His best line?
The best line that he's been on as far as that.
It's tricky. I'm going to say either Verhaeghe, Barkov, Reinhart.
No, this season. This season.
This season. That's a tough one. Verhaeghe, Rodriguez, Reinhart. I don't know.
Greer, Bennett, Verhaeghe. That time where.
That little stretch where Greer got him going. Yeah.
Because he was getting going. That is the only line where Carter Verhaeghe has a positive, and it's a +8. Every other line that he's been on has been a minus.
And you'll never see him play on that line in that sort of line at full health ever. Yeah. It'll never happen.
Yeah, because when I think of AJ Greer on that, you're thinking that he's taking the majority of the forechecking chances and he's being more of the F1, while Carter Verhaeghe could focus on being more of that F2 while you can mix that up when you have Reinhart, which Barkov is mostly more of the F3 there on that line, using the give and go opportunities as well. And how much he's missed whenever it comes to gaining the zone as well. We're not seeing that with different lines that Verhaeghe is in. So either Carter Verhaeghe is more reliant on having to do that if it's a stretch pass in the neutral zone and then maybe a turnover or maybe a gap close. There's not that much offensive zone time neither with Verhaeghe's line.
And one thing I want to say on that before we move on though is and this is something you don't ever really miss until it's gone. And I feel like we haven't discussed it at all this season, but the Panthers cycle game without Barkov is so much worse. There's almost no below the goal line cycle game. He's so strong on his feet. He's so strong in puck possession. And that's where someone like Carter Verhaeghe absolutely flourishes, because the below the goal line cycle game wears out the defense so much that Carter Verhaeghe has made a living out of finding the empty spaces and taking those passes and having nothing but open net or one-on-one with the goalie to shoot at. And he's such a good stationary shooter that when he gets the puck in those situations, it's on his stick and off his stick, and it's hard for goalies to react. Those opportunities just don't exist when Barkov's not on the lineup. And you thought some of it would come back with Tkachuk, but he can only do so much of the cycling. It can't be a one-line cycle team. You have to have at least two, preferably three lines playing a reliable cycle game to really open up the defense for those chances. So when those come back, Carter Verhaeghe's game will come back too. And I think next season it's going to be a lot of questions for guys to answer, and they should come in motivated. But we got a few more games of this year to go. Yeah. So we'll get through that and then look to next season.
Yeah, and especially when the D is behind the net, and when you win those battles, you allow him to get those chances from the left flank, and then there's a screen in front that it's by a Panther, not someone else trying to block a shot, taking away the eyes, and that definitely helps for more of those chances. But we're going to transition to segment number 3, where we're going to discuss how, although they have been given a little bit of grace this season, we've seen more frustration from the actual coach. We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Third and final segment here on this Wednesday, March 4th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day, and continuing the discussion here regarding the Panthers and just the frustrating season that it has been with injuries, and likely going to be the first team since the 2015 LA Kings to miss the postseason after winning the Stanley Cup. And it's funny because in Paul Maurice's media availability after morning skate, he spoke about how these guys have done so much this season and everything that I've asked them to do, some of the same language and the same words that he's been using. But it really truly got to him this time around. And I just think it's like really kind of like feeling the pressure on where the team is at the deadline, even if their playoff chances are very low, trying to like, the trade deadline is another checkpoint in the season. You're getting to the 75% mark of the year. So it's just maybe a way of trying to get his team to at least finish that part strong. I know that they needed to go 18-4 coming into tonight for them to at least get to 100 points and give themselves a chance. But it's been a long time since we've seen this out of the coach. And that is where you see that the season is even wearing down on him.
Yeah, and Coach Maurice is human too. And I think he's done a pretty masterful job of giving this team the grace that they've kind of earned over the past couple of years, understanding that it's just a different type of season. You're asking them to climb an uphill battle, basically climb a mountain here, not even a hill, with barely any equipment. They're just not equipped to do this right now. So I applaud him for giving them sort of that leeway and the understanding that I feel like Coach Maurice has had throughout the season. But yeah, you're seeing it boil over a little bit in frustration, because I think the one thing that gets to him as a head coach is when he feels the effort is lacking, and when the the drive and the not necessarily will to win, but the will to try is lacking. We've seen games where the Panthers have lost. We've seen games where the Panthers have even been blown out, and he's okay with the effort. He won't say anything bad about the team effort wise because he felt like they did the right things. It didn't go their way that night. When you really see him lose his cool or kind of have that public frustration is when you see the games where whether they win or lose, when he feels the effort isn't there and they're not doing the right things habit wise. They're not playing to the style that the Panthers are supposed to be playing to, and when the effort level is not to the standard that they keep, that's what gets to them. And right now, they're not playing to the standard of effort, the standard of hustle. And there's a lot of guys in the lineup that, the Panthers have played a ton of hockey in the last couple of years. Not everyone in that lineup has played that much hockey in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
There's guys that their effort is lacking that it frankly shouldn't be. Just because the veterans who have been through the wars over the past couple of years don't have it in the tank doesn't mean that you have the excuse and the same right to not slack, but the same right to have less in the tank. There are guys who have not played that as much hockey that should be giving 150% if Matthew Tkachuk or if Sam Bennett or if Sam Reinhart or if Brad Marchand can't give 100%. Other guys in the lineup should be giving 150. And I feel like in general, there's a lot of guys that are just throwing in the towel.
And I think of guys who didn't have to go through that mileage. One of them who actually got downgraded to the fourth line in Mackie Semiskevich, who the pressure is on him. He's due for a new contract as an RFA this summer, who maybe it's time to have a conversation. I mean, we've been trying to have a conversation about maybe his fit long term with the group. Uvis Balinskis didn't play in every single playoff game for the Panthers, and he's making mistake after mistake for the Panthers here. The fact that Jeff Petrie was scratched tonight. I mean, we've seen it all season for the Panthers on just how he's not even on power play 2 for this unit. So it's like, you're not getting the same juice that you would have gotten out of Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Nate Schmidt in the situation for the defense, and then the replacements for the forwards to try to at least get more playing time. You're not getting a lot out of them as well. So that's also the fact that, the depth is still strong, but when you're without star power for a certain amount of time and you're trying to at least have those guys carry the team through 82 games, which again, Matthew Tkachuk's absence was more than half the season. Seth Jones is now going on 20 plus games now. So that's 2 your months. Anchor. 2 months almost. So that there's just so much that a team can hit, how many hits a team can take. But for those who didn't watch the game, I don't want to paint this as a picture of Paul Maurice is just laying it out there like he did in Toronto back in 2023. It was just a very honest, very calculated kind of interview because of where it was in the game. It was still with plenty of time. After the game, he did say about how, quote, "There's a certain way we move the puck with an attitude coming into the offensive line that I think we've gotten away from," close quote. And it just really just comes down to what you said earlier, the cycle game. It's not working for the Panthers there. And just the ability to retrieve the puck on rebounds and even take away the eyes and ability to get those greasy ones, neither.
Yeah, and I think that this so much of hockey and so much of the Panthers' past couple of seasons, it's not always black and white the way things work. Hockey, more than any other sport, is just not that much of a black and white sport. There's no guarantee ever in hockey that if you do all the right things that you're even going to win. It's such a game. It's such a sport of fortuitous bounces, luck. It can come down to more than any other sport, really, a game of inches. And I think for the Panthers, the past couple of years, they've made their own good luck and they've made their own good fortune by doing consistently everything, not everything right, but consistently putting the right effort forward. And more often than not, when you do that, you will be rewarded. It's not a guarantee. We've seen, even in the Panthers playoff runs the last couple of years, how fine those margins are. When Edmonton, for example, last year, Panthers were doing every single thing right in that series. And at the end of the day, they very well could have lost that series if an overtime game didn't go their way in that early in that series, or if a couple bounces don't go their way. Year before that, the series against the Rangers, the Panthers were on the brink of death in that series if they don't score an overtime winning goal on the power play in a series that they absolutely dominated. They could have lost that series strictly off of overtime losses. And they did everything right in that series, a series they absolutely dominated. That's how fine the margins are. And the thing about this season is it's very black and white. If you are missing the kind of firepower and manpower that the Panthers are missing for the amount of time that they've been missing them, the effort has to be superhuman consistently to have a chance. And you see the bad luck, the breaks that don't go their way, and they stand out like crazy this season because you don't have the kind of consistent effort and consistent firepower to create your own good breaks to balance those out. It's just not happening this year. And I think we've now reached the point in the season where guys have given the superhuman effort to stay afloat as long as they possibly can, and it's just not there to give anymore.
Yeah,
and it's unfortunate because we're so used to it, and you get used to seeing this team overcome literally any obstacle, no matter how ridiculous or insane it is. It's been stacked in front of them. They've just knocked all of those things down. And this one is just too big to knock down. They don't have the firepower to do it.
Yeah, and that's where the losses kind of, when they pile on, and it makes the mistakes even magnified. But sometimes it's not even surprising when you see them happen. But at the same time, you said we're not used to this. But at the same time, if you've been a Panther fan longer than before the 2021 season, you kind of are at the same time.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit.
Just a little.
It hurts less when you've won 2 Stanley Cups in a row. It doesn't feel as bad.
That's why when Steve Goldstein says Adam Henrique, that guy, it doesn't hurt as much in 2020.
Yeah, now we at least have proof of concept. We know what the other side feels like.
No doubt. But Jacob, I want to thank you so much for joining me on another edition of Winans Wednesday here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you for joining me as we broke down this 5-1 loss for the Panthers against the New Jersey Devils. Tell everybody where they can follow you online, my friend.
Yep, you can follow me on X at JakeW_8.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week.
Looking forward to it. Thanks.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.